Hey there everyone, Willie here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a question I've heard a lot over the years, and that is, what level does my queen need to be before I can start learning how to queen charge? So, let's take a look. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to be taking a look at doing a queen walk or queen charge with a low-level queen, basically learning the basics. So first of all, the difference between a queen walk and a queen charge is really just whether or not you're going to walk the queen around the outside of the base, or if you're going to charge the queen into the interior of the base. And which one of those you choose to do is going to be depending on what value you're looking for, and we will go more in depth on that here shortly. But to answer the big overall question, what level does the queen need to be before you can start to learn this enormous strategy in the game? And the answer to that is at level 15, that's when you can really start to practice the strategy and start to get the hang of the basics. Now, of course, you're not going to have a very good time taking on max Town Hall 9s, especially in war, but you can use multiplayer and you can start to get the hang of it there. Practice is going to set it up so that when your queen is a higher level, you've already started to get the hang of it and you can continue to build on that. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're just going to take a look at some multiplayer attacks, go over the basics, what you want to look for, what you want to do, basically just how do you start doing queen charges. So to kick things off, the typical queen charge is going to have 5 healers. Now the reason for that is, the reason for 5 healers is that when you add multiple healers, after 4 healers, the effectiveness of the additional healers is a lot less. So the 5th healer actually doesn't do quite as much healing as the other 4 healers, but the reason people usually take 5 is because you're likely to lose one to a Seeking Air Mine or some defenses, and when that happens, you don't want to immediately be down to 3 effective healers. So if you have 5 healers, you lose one to whatever reason, you still have 4 effective healers going through the rest of the attack. Now there are some situations where people will just take the 4 healers, but that is a lot less common, and we're probably not going to go over those situations in this video. That's something we'll take a look at further on down the line when we look at queen charging at much higher Town Hall levels. But for now, I suggest just taking the 5 healers, and then the rest of the army that I'm using doesn't really matter a whole lot. You are going to want some rage spells, usually 2 rage spells, but you can probably get away with 1. And then a free spell is what I like to take in my CC. I get a nice max level free spell that's going to help the queen charge tremendously. And then if you're running a ground army with your queen charge, you still want to take 1 or 2 balloons, maybe 3 balloons if you're using a baby dragon to funnel. And then that's to check for Seeking Air Mines. Now at Town Hall 9, the housing space is especially precious, so you're probably going to be just running 2 balloons if you're running a ground army. But let's go ahead and take a look at some examples here, and then we'll see how this all kind of starts to come together. Okay, so taking a look at this base here that we found, you see I've dropped the 2 balloons. One's to check for air mines for the healers, the other one was to keep the baby dragon safe. And then it'll also check for Seeking Air Mines over here, which also protects the healers. So kind of a 2 birds, 1 stone there. And what I'm doing here is I'm funneling the queen to go into the wall here. You can see I opened up the wall with the wall breakers. Now, getting the queen to go in the right direction is kind of an art on its own, and that's something you're really going to have to just get down with practice. You got to be able to funnel her to go in the directions you want her to go, and that can be tricky for even the top players in the game. So that'll be one thing that you want to work for. But the wall breakers, one thing I want to make a note of for those guys is you also want to get those down fairly early on. Because if you don't get the wall opened up in time, the queen will decide to go in a different direction if that wall's closed off. Even if you get the wall opened up and she's already decided to go up this way, opening those walls are not going to get her to turn back around and go in. She's going to go off to the races. Now before we get too far into this raid, I want to point out, so you have the rage spells. Why would we rage up the queen charge? So the rage spell is not for the queen. I've seen a couple of people, when they're learning queen charge, they just drop the rage on the queen and forget about the healers. Well, the rage spell is actually primarily for the healers. I mean, it's nice to get the healers and the queen when you first drop the rage spell to give the queen a little bit of a damage boost, but you really want to get the healers in, especially when she starts taking damage like she is with this Expo here, because when the healers get raged up, they can heal a lot faster. They're getting that same kind of effect from the rage spell, and that helps the queen to push through heavy defenses like she's pushing through the Expo right now, even though she could handle just the Expo without a rage spell. So that's something else to consider when you're doing these attacks, is what do you actually need to spend to get the queen through that area. I could have actually gotten my queen through that area with no rage spells, except maybe later on as she got targeted by the second Expo on the back end. So I could have saved a rage spell there, and you can see I did save the freeze spell as well. So the more spells you can save and get the same amount of value, the better. So just because you have a couple of things designated for the queen charge, if you don't have to use them, don't use them, and then you have them for the rest of the attack. So that'll be another thing that really takes practice, is trying to identify when you really need to use your spells. And that's also something that's a lot easier to do when you're actually looking at a base to plan for like a war attack or something like that. So it does get a bit easier, and we are going to take a look at that probably in a future video. I'm going to get the queen maxed out, and then we're going to take a look at war attacks, but that's not going to be in today's video. That'll be for later on. Today we're just going to look at the basics, and then so those are a few tips moving on. Let's go ahead and move on to the next example. Okay, so we're going to look at the funnel on this attack. I do like to use the king a lot when doing the funnel, but something to be aware of when you're using the king, or if you're using any ground troops like Valkyries to set a funnel, you can do that, but be aware that dropping your healers, you need to make sure the other ground troops are well out of the way, and make sure your queen is taking damage if they are kind of close still. Otherwise, you can get the healers to go on something other than the queen. You can see I almost had a wall breaker fail there, but I get the wall opened up. I got the healers down once the king was well out of the way, and now my queen is going to be charging into the base. A balloon did get pulled out of the CC, so I'm going to drop a poison and a rage to deal with that. The balloons can actually do a good bit of damage to the queen, especially at this low level 15. So she's a little bit susceptible to damage there. So we get the rage spell down. That's going to get those healers going, and that's going to push her through the balloon and through the enemy queen. And then if you look at the base here, there's nothing else that's going to be targeting the queen for basically the rest of the attack if I want to use the rest of the spells for my Lalo, which is exactly what I'm going to do. And not only that, but I believe I start my Lalo up here so that I can get to those Expos early. That gets those threats down and helps keep the queen alive. And that's another big thing you want to try to do, is keep your queen alive when you're doing any queen charge attack. If you can keep her alive through the end of the raid, that helps your attack tremendously, because she's going to be on the back end of the attack doing cleanup or tanking from defenses or whatever she needs to be doing back there. So that's something else that if you can keep the queen alive, it helps a lot to do so. So we've talked a lot so far about the how, but not so much about the why. So why would you do this queen charge strategy? What is it you're trying to accomplish? And that is going to depend a little bit on what attack strategy you're using. But you almost always, you're trying to get the clan castle troops down. As you can see, we're back on this base here. I'm sending my queen into this area because she can go in there and trigger the CC. I could also drop a couple of balloons and lure out the CC if I wanted to. And especially with an air attack, sometimes you want to actually avoid luring the CC with your queen and just do it with your air troops, so you're not pulling out something like a lava hound, which would otherwise stay in. But for this attack, this is just regular attack. We're going to go ahead and try to get the queen, pull the CC. I don't believe anything comes out on this raid. But the other thing that is important in a Lalo or a Hog Rider attack is you want to get the enemy queen down. So if the enemy queen was up, which in this case she also was not there, I'm going to be able to reach the CC, the enemy queen, and this Expo and air defense wizard tower. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to use your queen to get value off the base before you start the rest of your attack. So there are obviously some high value items here, like the CC, the queen, and the Expo, and then you've also got the like medium value items which aren't quite as important, but it's still nice to be able to charge your queen in and grab. That's like this air defense and these wizard towers. I actually don't think the queen gets the wizard tower, but that would be something that she would be able to get if I were to let her continue on through the attack. And then back on this base, we're kind of doing the same thing. So it is typical for your high value targets. What you're trying to get is the queen and the enemy CC. So I'm doing the same thing here. This one we did have just a balloon in the CC, but it gets lured out by the king, which is really nice. I don't have to deal with the CC deeper in the base. The king's actually going to bring it out. The queen can deal with that closer to the outside before she moves in to take on the other defenses or the enemy queen. Because it's better to deal with the CC if you're not also dealing with the enemy queen at the same time, or dealing with like 2 expos at the same time. Now coming in from down here, I'm not able to get any of the expos, so the only value I'm getting is that balloon out of the CC and the enemy queen, which in this case happens to be enough because these expos, they are low level. Same thing with the wizard towers, they're all low level except maybe 1 or 2 on the outside edges were maxed out. It looks like just 1. The king got quite a bit of value there on the side in addition to the funnel. So those are going to be your typical things at Town Hall 9 to look for. If you can pick up an expo or 2 as well as the CC and the queen, odds are you're probably going to have a successful attack depending on whatever the rest of your attack is. But something else to keep in mind is the clock. You don't want to spend too much time getting the value before you have to send out the rest of the army, because often that'll lead to a time fail. So we're going to look at quite a few of those things here, and we're also going to look at how I mismanaged the clock on this attack. But we're going in, this is actually Town Hall 10. I thought it would be interesting to see if we can take on an Inferno Tower with the Queen Charge. So we're getting a funnel here. We're not funneling the entire corner here. We kind of put the baby dragon in deeper than the king, and that's how we're going to be able to set the funnel here. So the queen, she's not going to wander off on the sides, and that's also because of my wall breaker timing. So I am going to be able to get the wall breaker down. Something else to consider when you're doing your wall breakers, when you send in the balloon to check for seeking air mines, that balloon can distract a wizard tower, which would otherwise destroy your wall breakers. So the balloon's going in, wizard tower's distracted, I send in the wall breakers, they get the wall opened up, the king is finishing up the funnel on this side. Also notice I have not yet dropped my healers in. The king is not only close, but he's headed towards the queen, so I don't want to drop in my healers and then have them switch over. Now the king's headed away, I watched the barbarians go down, now it's safe to put in the healers, they're going to come in, and the value that I'm getting here, I know that we're getting a little ahead of ourselves looking at Inferno Towers, but that is part of the value, especially if you're in like Clan War League and you have to hit a base like this. And we got an expo there. This would be a little bit more challenging if that expo wasn't upgrading. So I would have had to have spent a rage earlier on and get that expo down, but you can see she's taking it down without getting into range of the Inferno Tower. So that would have gone down with a rage spell, but I can save the rage here because it's not active. And she's going to be in range of the CC to get it taken down. The enemy queen was not up, but that would have added some more challenge to this. I would not have been able to get her with the queen charge from that entry, and that would have made things a lot more complicated. But you can see here the queen's going in. Let's go ahead and put this on 1x. She's going to step up. Now this is how you take on a single Inferno Tower if you have to do so. I was actually a little bit early. I could have waited another second for that free spell, but she's in the rage. I've got the free spell down. I don't remember if I dropped the second rage. No, I don't need to. So the Inferno Tower goes down. She's also going to be able to reach the Town Hall there. So if you're in a situation where you're just trying to get the 2-star because you're hitting up a Town Hall, then the Town Hall becomes a valuable target. And that's included in my Queen Charge, and I'm able to get the 2-star here. But you can see I've started the rest of my attack like a minute and a half left. So I spent half the clock just doing that little bit of Queen Charge. And in an attack where you're trying to get 3 stars, that's not going to be good. That's I've spent too much time and not quite enough value, because if the queen was up, that would have definitely put a damper on this raid. The queen would have taken down all my balloons, and then that would have been that. But with just that little bit of time left, my balloons are going to go down, unfortunately. And I think the queen could have finished up the raid, but as you can see, 30 seconds left. She's not going to have quite enough time to get through everything here, and it will be a time fail. Quick mention, I do have a giveaway going on that ends in 1 day where I'm giving away 5 gold passes. So if you want to win a gold pass, feel free to hop into my Discord server. It is linked down below and enter to win that giveaway. I run that giveaway every month. So if you do enter this one and you don't win, you will get another chance for the next month. But back to the examples. So we have another example here. This time we do have some clan castle troops to worry about, something that's probably going to be fairly common, especially at this level. And we also have, let's slow it down just a little bit, we have an example where we have one of these boxy bases, and something I see people try to do is funnel their queen in directly on the corner here. Like, wall break this tip and then try to queen charge into the corner that way. But what you want to do is you want to go into the box on the side. That gives your queen less room to basically run out. Plus, my baby dragon was able to fix that funnel there. So looking at this Electro Dragon, I needed to get the rage spell down. So there's the rage spell. And the E-Drag is actually going to basically take out my queen's ability with the first hit. So you're going to see the E-Drag's hit come in. Oops, I sped it up just a little too much. But you see in there, one hit from the E-Drag basically wiped away my queen's ability. So on that Electro Dragon, I spent a rage, I spent the queen's ability, and I spent the poison spell. So that was an expensive E-Drag right there. And now I've got the queen charging in, and she doesn't have her ability to fall back on if things get too overwhelming. So she's going to be taking on the enemy queen and the Expo there. For whatever reason, I had a second poison spell. That was not on purpose. So as she moves in, the rage actually wears off. So that second rage was a little bit early. But I do freeze up the enemy queen and the Expo, so she's able to work through the enemy queen and get the Expo taken down. So I got some high value buildings out of the way. Actually, she's taking on 2 Expos now, so she might not even be able to get that second one down. I don't remember how this one plays out. So yeah, it does look like she'll take down that Expo. And then after that, she shouldn't be in too much more danger. Of course, she's still going to have that second Expo on her, but she's got the healers, and that's the only defense targeting her. So from here, she's actually doing pretty well, and then I can Lalo the rest of the base. In this one, we do have another boxy base, and you're going to see I'm going to do basically exactly what I said not to do in the last attack. And I'm going to go in right on the corner here, sending the baby dragon in to get the funnel on this side, and then the king is up on the top side. So both of the sides are funnel, but it is a little bit of a gamble here because the queen could easily wander off to this double cannon, and then she's going to be off to the races around the outside of the base rather than going in and getting the enemy queen, which is what I'm after, as well as the CC. You notice how I dropped the rage spell there. I didn't hit the healers at first because the queen wasn't really taking any damage. So I dropped it a little bit further forward, and what that did is it sped up the queen so she got through that storage faster, but when she moved forward to go into that enemy queen and the Expo damage, she pulled the healers into the rage, and then that kept her alive. I used the second rage spell there. That's going to help get her through those Expos, and then that is a pretty decent queen charge entry there, and the rest of the base is going to get hit with the Lalo. So I think those are all the examples I have right now. I do have an army ready to go, so let's do one live example before I wrap up the video. Alright, so this base I think we're going to go ahead and take out. And it's actually pretty interesting because I've got the CC, the queen, and an Expo over here, as well as 2 air defenses and a wizard tower that I can reach pretty easily. So let's start the king over here. I can start him on that side of the army camp, and that's going to send him away from the queen. And then let's go ahead and put a balloon in, baby dragon, and one more balloon check for seeking air mine for the healers. Okay, so that's looking good. Actually, I might even be able to break the king in and get a little more value there. I don't need the wall breakers for the queen in this example. Oh, the baby dragon's taking on the enemy queen. He actually took her out. So there we go. There's something right off the bat we don't have to worry about for the queen. The queen was pretty low level. That's not going to happen very often. I think I'll need a rage spell here for the queen as she takes on the double cannon and the Expo right there. And then I can probably get through. Well, it depends on if anything comes out of the CC. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. I need to make sure she gets up close enough. I think she's about in range now. She's definitely in range now, so she shouldn't need any more spells, because once that Expo goes down, there isn't really anything else targeting her. So I'll wait for her to take down at least that air defense, and then I can just let her work while I do the rest of the attack. Okay, so she's looking fine. Let's go ahead and start some balloons over here. And then we'll start the Lava Hound. And I always keep an eye on the queen's health bar down there, even while I'm doing the rest of this attack. That way, if something happens, I still have the rage and I still have the freeze. I can hop back over to where she's at, or I can just hurry up and hit her ability. But we're going to hold on to the ability. We're going to go ahead and rage spell right there, get through that expo. And we're going to freeze up that wizard tower. Start my baby dragon over here, get the rest of my cleanup going. I don't need the poison spell, we'll drop it right there. And then I don't think I need the haste spell either. And it's as easy as that. I've actually got 2 haste spells still. So something else to think about is when would you use the queen's ability? And really you can use the queen's ability when she's in danger of going down and you don't have time to get the rage spell going or freeze, because it even takes a couple of seconds for the rage to kick in or the freeze spells. So the ability is a good way to get a quick save when the queen's going down, or if you're just out of spells and that's your last option to keep the queen alive, or in this case at the end of the attack if you need to speed her up through the cleanup because your attack went so well. There's another good example of when to use the ability. So a lot of this really is going to just take experience. You got to get practice, and then you'll basically learn when to do what you need to do to keep your queen alive and that good stuff. But hopefully this video helps give you a good start on basically how to get started, what to do to have a successful queen charge to begin with. So if you have any questions, or if I've missed anything or said something that you think is wrong, let me know down in the comments below. I'd be happy to talk more about it. If this video is helpful, be sure to click that thumbs up. And if you want to see more Clash content from me, be sure to click that subscribe button. Thank you guys for stopping by, and I'll see you all next time.